This is going to be a review of working with negative numbers. Now, when you are thinking about negative numbers, I want you to think about a number line with 0 in the middle. Obviously, everything to the right is positive and everything to the left is negative. But one thing that kind of thumps people is as numbers get bigger to the right, you get bigger numbers. But notice as the actual number going on the negative side gets bigger, the negative sign in front makes it a smaller number, so that negative 10 is really smaller than negative 4. That throws a lot of people off. So let's just talk about when we would use negative numbers. There are some times where you're never going to use negative numbers, and you need to be aware of that. This is life skills of things that you should know. Nope, I can never have a negative number there. So if I get one, something is wrong. And some types of measurements. This is not an exclusive or an all-inclusive list. These are just things that I thought of. Some kinds of measurements, like you cannot have a negative length or a negative width. You can't have negative height or negative time. So some types of measurements cannot be negative. Also, things you can count or numbers of things cannot be negative. Like you can't have negative people or negative number of houses or negative number of apples. Now, some of the most common things that we deal with that can be negative are things like temperature. Now, temperature is just like a number line, except it's vertical, where we have an arbitrary 0, and everything above that is above 0, everything below that is below 0, and are negative temperatures. Another thing that we have that can be negative is altitude, and we came up with this arbitrary sea level, where everything above sea level is a positive altitude, and everything below sea level is a negative number, or below sea level. And the one that we are going to use the most in this unit is money. You can have more or less money than 0 money. And if you have more money, that's money you have to spend. If you have negative money, that represents debt or something that you owe. Okay, so I want you to get in the habit of knowing that the sign in front of a number indicates that it is either positive or negative. For example, if I just have the number 3 with nothing in front of it, that is a positive 3. But if I put that little negative sign in front of it, that makes it a negative 3. So when we're looking at expressions, I want you to look at 2x minus 3 as 2x plus a negative 3. That is a negative 3. It is not a positive 3. It is the exact same thing as saying 2x plus negative 3. Those first two ones say the exact same thing. Looking at negative 3 minus 2x, we actually have two negative numbers in this expression. We have negative 3, and then we also have negative 2, which is the coefficient to x. Then the next expression, the 3, has nothing in front of it, so it is a positive 3, but we still have our negative 2x. So remember, the sign in front of the number indicates if the number is negative or positive. All right, now let's just talk about the rules for multiplying and dividing negative numbers. And this is all kinds of negative numbers. Whole numbers, decimals, fractions. When you are multiplying and dividing, you use these rules. If the signs on the two numbers are the same, your answer is going to be positive. If the signs on the two numbers you are multiplying are opposites, like negative and positive or positive and negative, your answer is going to be negative. These rules also hold up for division. If the two numbers you are dividing are the same sign, your answer will always be positive. If the two numbers that you are dividing have different signs, your answer will always be negative. Now let's look at using this. I've got some examples here of problems, and I want us to just go through and identify, will my answer be negative or positive? Because it is a life skill to be able to look at numbers and have some number sense about them and say, hey, that doesn't make sense that it would be a negative, or it doesn't make sense that it would be a positive. So remember, if they have different signs, like our first example, our answer is going to be negative. If they have the same sign, whether it's division or multiplication, like our second example, our answer is going to be positive. Now, the third example, negative 12 fourths, is just a shorthand way of saying negative 12 divided by 4. A fraction is just a way of expressing a division statement. So one number is negative, one is positive, so my answer would have to be negative. And then I want you to pause the video and identify whether the rest of these would be positive or negative. Now that you have identified those, I want you to check. The second one, positive and a negative, they're opposite signs, or they're different signs, so that my answer would be negative. Same sign on the middle one, so my answer would be positive. Same sign on the last one, so my answer would be positive. On the bottom row, all three of these have two different signs, so my answer is going to be negative in each one of them. Now, the skill of being able to multiply or divide is just something that you will have to practice. So negative 3 times 20 is going to give me negative 60. Negative 35 divided by negative 5 is going to give me a positive 7. Negative 12 divided by 4 is going to give me a negative 3. 60 divided by negative 5 is going to give me a negative 12. Negative 18, divided by negative 3, it's going to give me a positive 6. Negative 7 times negative 8 is going to give me a positive 56. 10 divided by negative 2 is going to give me a negative 5. 9 times negative 15 is going to give me a negative 135. And negative 42 divided by 6 is going to give me a negative 7. Again, whether you can multiply or divide fluently in your head is a good skill to have. But the more important skill is to be able to identify if a number should be, an answer to a problem should be negative or positive. Now, I think you're ready to watch the next video, which goes into depths on the rules of adding and subtracting with negative numbers.